Ever faced a Karen so outrageous she shoved my disabled mom over a loud doorbell? Karen Whitfield's meltdown shattered our quiet Saturday morning. But here's the kicker. I own the neighborhood's water supply. Trust me, once the taps ran dry, Karen learned just how powerful quiet can get. Ever dealt with a Karen like this? Share your story below. Before we begin today's insane story, show some love if you've ever survived a wild Karen meltdown. Drop a like and let me know your craziest Karen run-in you've had down in the comments. Ever heard a scream that stops your heart dead cold? That was exactly my Saturday morning. Bright, deceptively peaceful, until Karen Whitfield, our HOA's self-appointed queen of outrage, stormed onto our quiet porch like she owned the whole block. The sun was shining, birds chirping. It should have been a calm weekend. Instead, it spiraled into a full-blown suburban meltdown. The culprit? The criminally loud doorbell my disabled mom, Linda, had installed for her safety. Now, this wasn't just any doorbell. She carefully chose and set it to be loud enough to catch her attention because of her serious hearing impairment. But to Karen, that bell was a sonic assault, ripping through her otherwise perfect day and disrupting the neighborhood's precious peace. The moment Karen's eyes landed on that doorbell, her entitlement ignited like a flamethrower. This noise is absolutely unacceptable. It ruins the whole neighborhood. She barked as if she were delivering a royal decree rather than complaining to neighbors. She paced back and forth, accusing us like we were the neighborhood noise mafia, holding the community hostage with our criminally loud alarm. Has anyone ever seen someone utterly lose it over something this petty? You know, like when your neighbor throws a tantrum about your music barely nudging the volume but secretly sneaks into your parties to have fun? I swear, entitled behavior gets weirder every time. Before I could even blink, Karen shoved my poor mom. Time seemed to slow. Mom stumbled, lost her balance, and hit the porch hard enough to bruise her arm and knock the breath out of her. She clutched her cane tightly, shock and pain mixing on her face, her eyes wide from the sudden violence. It wasn't just rude, it was outright assault. And Karen knew it. Have you ever witnessed someone's fury over something so tiny just consume them like wildfire? Like a tiny spark setting the whole block ablaze? Inside me, rage churned like a tornado. But I held back the urge to scream or lash out. This was bigger than a doorbell. It was a stark reminder of how entitlement sneaks into every quiet corner, unchecked and unchallenged. I'm Ethan Grant, by the way. Just your unassuming next-door neighbor who hates chaos. But here's the kicker. I own the local water company servicing this entire HOA, which means I literally control the taps that keep this neighborhood humming, showers, sprinklers, faucets, you name it. Karen had no clue who she was messing with while ranting about peace and quiet and HOA standards. Meanwhile, she waters her roses 3 times daily and brews coffee by the gallon, all while ignoring the bruised and vulnerable woman on our porch. Ever had that sudden, dizzying realization that you're sitting on ultimate leverage? Like holding the last slice of pizza at a family dinner, daring anyone to take it from you? As Mom gingerly rubbed her sore arm and wiped back tears trying to stay strong, I started planning. People like Karen cling to their precious rules like lifelines, until those rules don't go their way. I could see this would spiral out of control without someone stepping in. Just then, Luis Ramirez, our laid-back next-door neighbor and local musician, appeared with a knowing grin. "Looks like you're in the eye of the Karen hurricane," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Luis helped Mom inside, carrying her groceries with gentle care, a calm breeze cutting through the storm's fury. But behind those jokes, I knew what I had to do. That night, I flipped the switch. For 1 whole week, Karen and the entire HOA block would go dry. No showers, no sprinklers, no running water. Silence from dripping faucets, not just doorbells. The next morning, chaos exploded. Karen's smugness vanished, replaced by panic the moment her kitchen sink sputtered to silence mid-pour. Her roses drooped, neglected without their daily watering. The neighborhood buzzed with frantic messages demanding answers, gardeners pleading, kids whining over skipped baths. Karen led the charge, making furious calls and threatening emergency HOA meetings. Luis swung by again, grinning. Maybe she'll compose a blues ballad, the waterless rant. Meanwhile, Mom rested inside, her bruises slowly fading as a quiet smile finally broke through her pain. Watching Karen drown in her own chaos, justice served cold. Sometimes the quietest person wields the loudest power, and now, that person was me. So yeah, that doorbell wasn't just noise. It was a razor's edge that cut through entitlement and revealed who really rules the block. Karen Whitfield thought her HOA crown made her untouchable, totally unaware she'd been backed into a waterless corner. Ever tangled with a Karen so ridiculous it felt surreal? Like a prank that backfires on everyone but leaves you victorious? Share your wild neighbor stories below. Trust me, I'm all ears. You ever have that sick freeze in your chest? The kind where you're caught between exploding out loud and swallowing your anger whole? That was me the very second Karen Whitfield shoved my disabled mom hard off our porch, nearly pushing her into the street, like her safety was some kind of nuisance in Karen's kingdom. My mind screamed, "Say something, defend her," but my mouth locked tight as I tried to process the absurdity of it all. Who actually throws a tantrum over a doorbell volume? It felt surreal, like watching Dylan, the cousin we all tolerated, throw his usual hissy fit when the trampoline wasn't vibing right at last summer's barbecue. But this was darker, uglier. The kind of entitlement that leans on cruelty. Once I shook off the shock, I squared my shoulders and met Karen's icy blue glare with as much polite fire as I could muster. "Excuse me," I said, voice steady but sharp. "You just assaulted a disabled woman in broad daylight. How does that preserve your precious peace and quiet?" For a split second, I thought I might get an apology, or at least a pause for reconsideration. Nope. Instead, Karen doubled down, spouting her usual passive-aggressive HOA jargon about community standards and respect, like a broken record, mindlessly ignoring the real harm she caused. Meanwhile, Mom stood off to the side, gingerly rubbing her bruised arm, forcing a brave smile that barely concealed her pain. Watching her hold herself together like that ignited a fierce defiance in me. Karen's tantrum would not slide. Not on my watch. That's when it hit me. Something I'd forgotten in the heat of the moment. I'm Ethan Grant. Not just any neighbor. I own the local water company that services this entire HOA. Talk about ironic leverage, right? That sudden rush of power humming beneath my skin was like clutching the last piece of cake at a family dinner, knowing no one else could have it. This was no petty grab for revenge. It was justice waiting to be served. Karen shoved my disabled mom over a doorbell dispute. Doesn't justice sometimes need a drought? I glanced at Mom, still rubbing her arm but standing tall, then back at Karen, who was busy ranting about peace, quiet, and community standards, as if the neighborhood was her personal kingdom to control. Mom and I exchanged a quick look. She nodded almost imperceptibly, and I quietly reached for my phone. Flipping the familiar switch to control the water supply was easier than I thought. Within minutes, chaos erupted all around us. Showers froze mid-lather, sprinklers gasped and withered in sun-baked cruelty, gardens wilted under the unforgiving heat, and the entire block suddenly came to a standstill. The sweetest irony? Karen's once pristine white sweater somehow caught a stubborn stain amid the unfolding pandemonium, as if karma had arranged a perfect little photo op just for me. Luis Ramirez, our resident jokester and longtime family friend, happened to be passing by right then. He popped over to check on Mom, and of course, to tease Karen's plight mercilessly. "Man," he chuckled, shaking his head, "Karen's dropping a new album, No Water Blues, featuring hits like Dry Tears, Empty Taps." Ever had that one friend who turns every disaster into comedy gold? Luis was pure gold that day. Karen's meltdown escalated quickly. She bombarded me with frantic emails and relentless calls, summoned emergency HOA meetings, and painted me as the villain in every narrative, even after she shoved Mom. Gardeners griped about dying plants, kids begged for baths they couldn't take, and our quiet street sounded more like a reality TV set for a day. Meanwhile, Karen's fuming face became a neighborhood spectacle, a dramatic fall from a self-appointed throne. From blowing up over a doorbell to suffering waterless despair, her grip on reality seemed to unravel in real time. Watching this entitlement implode, all from my kitchen chair, was almost too delicious to believe. Like witnessing a cat, dethroned by a hyperactive puppy, priceless and a little bit sweet. But here's the kicker beneath all the fury and spectacle. The water cutoff wasn't petty revenge. It was a wake-up call. Control isn't about screaming from your HOA throne or shoving disabled grandmas over noise complaints. It's about responsibility, respect, and maybe, just maybe, a dash of empathy. The very things Karen clearly lacked when she pushed Mom. Now, she's groveling for mercy from those she tried to bully the hardest. As Mom's bruises slowly heal and the entire block pleads for relief, I can't help but grin. Sometimes, you just have to turn the tap off to turn the lesson on. Next time Karen storms my porch, I guarantee she'll think twice, not just about doorbell volumes, but about what it really means to respect your neighbors. Ever dealt with a Karen like this? Drop your own, no water blues stories below. I'm all ears. Ever heard a scream that stops your heart and flips your stomach like your phone just plunged into a swimming pool? That was me, Ethan Grant, frozen on our quiet porch, watching Karen Whitfield shove my disabled mom backward like she was clearing the way for a new statue. I still can't believe someone could be so entitled to push a disabled woman over something as petty as the tone of a doorbell mom installed for her safety. It was like yelling at the rain to stop, pointless, ridiculous, and cruel. Just days before, Karen coldly knocked lunch trays off old Mr. Jenkins' table, laughing it off like a bad joke. But this shove? This was a whole new level of entitlement. What do you do when the very person tormenting your family has no clue you hold their leash? Like when your neighbor complains about your loud music, totally unaware you own the sound system they secretly envy. Sweet, delicious irony, right? That day, as Karen ranted about community standards and decibel limits, with zero awareness that I controlled the neighborhood's water supply, I felt the dam crack inside me. This wasn't just rudeness, it was an invasion of dignity. So with the perfect innocent smile, I looked Karen in the eye and said, "Funny thing about doorbell complaints, they usually get fixed with a little water pressure adjustment." She sniffed, like she smelled a lie or rotten eggs, blinking in disbelief, utterly clueless what I meant. You ever hold a secret superpower and just wait for it to unfold? There's no better feeling than teaching an entitled bully a lesson, especially when you have all the cards. Like when your little sibling crashes your birthday party, and you get to hide their cake. Revenge tastes better that way. The very next morning I flipped the switch. A single flick at the control panel and the water to the entire HOA block, every house, every sprinkler, every tap, went cold and silent. Instant chaos broke out. People left showers mid-rinse, clutching bars of soap like life rafts, ears stinging from the shock of freezing water cascading down. Sprinklers twitched helplessly, gardens began to wither, and lawns turned patchy green-yellow overnight. Our neighbor Luis Ramirez, ever the comedian, popped out wearing a bright, ironically too clean white tee, declaring, "Welcome to the great HOA water crisis of the century." His running commentary turned what could have been a disaster into community legend. And the icing on the cake? Karen's pristine white sweater got doused with a stubborn red wine stain from a wild sprinkler spray during her epic meltdown. The look on her face, a cocktail of fury, disbelief, and humiliation, was pure comedy gold. It's like watching a soap opera unfold live, courtesy of a power you hold right under your fingertips. The neighborhood exploded. Gardeners muttered about drought apocalypses like doomsayers. Parents juggled explaining to kids why baths were off the table. And HOA group chats buzzed with survival tips, water rationing hacks, and wild theories about what triggered the crisis. Luis's awful puns, dry taps and broken dreams, lean water, mean streets, had everyone laughing through the chaos. Karma was sweet, just as Karen's thirst for control peaked. The very water that sustained the community dried up. It was the perfect, absurd justice. Ever seen someone's entire world shake because they lost what they thought was untouchable? Like a king toppled by a single pawn. By day 3, shock morphed into full-blown panic. Karen's meltdown hit soap opera levels. Her emails, filled with desperate pleas and grand promises of better behavior, flooded my inbox. Emergency HOA meetings sprang up overnight. neighbors debating lawsuits and calling for immediate action. The community split, half hating Karen's humbled, begging state, the other half reveling in the spectacle of entitlement forced to eat humble pie. You ever seen a high and mighty queen reduced to pleading like a contestant on a reality show? The way she switched from icy glare to awkward smiles was priceless. Luis joked it was like watching a cat dethroned by a hyperactive puppy, chaotic, hilarious, and totally unexpected. Then came the grand finale. Karen showed up at my door, stripped of her usual icy grace. Her smile was forced, her tone pleading as she offered to replace the offensive doorbell with a silent one, because apparently that was the hill she was willing to die on now. For someone so obsessed with control, it was absurd, almost theatrical. Maybe I almost felt sorry, if not for Mom's bruises still faintly visible, and the way Karen had shoved her like she was nothing. Luis reminded me calmly that this drought wasn't about revenge, but a sharp lesson sometimes. A cold shower, or no shower at all, teaches more than words ever could. Ever pulled a prank that backfired on everyone but tasted like a golden victory? Like hiding your siblings' shoes and watching the frantic hunt beginning? That was this. So here I am, soaking in the aftermath. Mom's bruises are slowly fading. HOA Karen's temper has finally cooled, though I'm betting she's plotting her next stunt, and the whole neighborhood buzzes with juicy gossip. Next time Karen rants about noise or rules, she'll think twice. I hold the tap. Real power flows where the water goes. Who knew a petty doorbell feud would flood the community with drama this wild? Stay tuned. With Karen involved, this story is just getting started. Got your own wild HOA saga or a neighbor battle that spiraled? Share your story below. I'm all ears. By day 3 of my No Water for Karen & Co. experiment, the entire block had morphed into something straight out of a reality show, complete with desperate pleas, frantic deals, and the kind of antics that only hitting rock bottom can inspire. Sure, feuds over barking dogs or misplaced trash bins can spiral out of control, but this was on a whole other level, fueled by dry faucets and raw, unfiltered entitlement. Remember back in part 1 when Karen Whitfield shoved my disabled mom, turning our quiet neighborhood upside down over a criminally loud doorbell? That moment set the tone, but by day 3, Karen's queenly grip on the HOA was crumbling faster than anyone could say, "Water shut off." It was like watching the ultimate fall from grace unfold in slow motion. Karen, who had been the untouchable HOA diva with clipboard in hand and heels sharp enough to cut glass, had transformed into a desperate supplicant begging for mercy, like a contestant fighting for survival on one of those brutal reality TV elimination rounds. She wasn't just knocking at my door anymore, she was practically crawling, promising to replace that offensive doorbell with a silent one. A silent doorbell. Can you believe that was Karen's hill to die on? The absolute absurdity of her attempting to bargain down to a soundless chime from the very bell my mom installed for her safety was mind-blowing. This wasn't just a negotiation, it was an all-out spectacle of humiliation. And I wasn't the only one watching this drama unfold. Luis Ramirez, our neighborhood joker, couldn't help but call it Ethan's Waterworks Summer Bash, a cheeky nod to my friend Ethan Grant, the handyman who helped me rig the water shutoff. Everyone loved how the power dynamics had flipped. My inbox overflowed with all kinds of desperate emails, from promises of bake sales in appreciation to awkward invitations for peace talks. The sheer volume of groveling messages was so thick it felt like swimming in syrup, and I enjoyed every last drop. Watching Karen, the neighborhood's self-appointed bully, forced to swallow a massive slice of humble pie, was schadenfreude served on a silver platter. Have you ever witnessed someone so full of entitlement get dethroned and reduced to groveling? Like the grand feline ruler of the block, suddenly outmatched by a hyperactive puppy. That's exactly the kind of priceless moment this was. Karma, unquestionably, had never tasted sweeter. Slowly, the neighbors began to realize exactly who held the real strings. For the first time, the HOA wasn't the iron fist enforcing rules. It was the desperate wrist, begging for the water flow that I controlled. People started regarding me less as the pesky neighbor and more like the benevolent water czar of the block. Ethan even joked that we should throw a summer splash festival once the drought drama settled. Will the HOA ever forget who orchestrated the dry spell? Not a chance. Maybe next door's welcome signs should say, "Welcome to Ethan's Water Kingdom." Flipping their entitlement on its head felt like poetic justice, and the satisfaction was just the cherry on top. The grand finale was Karen's meltdown. Her usual crisp, ice-cold tone shattered entirely. Instead of delivering imperious commands, she paced nervously, shooting wild glares and firing off email rants that swung wildly between threats of legal action and sob stories about being forced to survive without a shower. Remember when she shoved Mom? Well, this was payback served cold and dry. I wasn't the only one enjoying the chaos. Neighbors watched with bated breath as emergency HOA meetings scrambled to loot any possible solution amid the water crisis. Karen suddenly spun into a community emergency, but nothing stopped her downward spiral. Watching her run a marathon in the desert without a water bottle was as ridiculous as it was oddly satisfying to witness. Then came the clincher. Karen appeared on my doorstep, stripped of her queenly veneer, wearing an awkward, sheepish smile that barely masked a silent prayer. Hands were clenched together in front of her, like she was pleading for divine intervention. Or a miraculous water miracle. You could almost hear her thoughts. How do I get this guy to turn the water back on without completely losing face? I played it cool, of course, but inside I was grinning like I'd just hit the jackpot. Seeing a bully forced to grovel? It feels a lot like watching a notorious villain get dunked in a kiddie pool. Humbling, slightly ridiculous, and immensely satisfying. Karen's sharp tongue was now reduced to muttering phrases like, "Let's try to compromise," and maybe the doorbell fuss got blown out of proportion, sounding like a totally different person. The whole block caught every single bit of this transformation, and I savored the perfect payoff after all the drama. This wasn't about charity. It was about standing up for my mom and for basic decency. That bruise on her arm wasn't just a mark on her skin. It was entitlement's ugly scar etched into reality. Sometimes, power comes dripping from the tap you hold in your hands. And trust me, everyone learned that lesson the hard way. So heed this, Karen, or any bully who thinks they can raise Cain over petty noise complaints or shove disabled women without consequences. Beware. The real power in this neighborhood flows right through the water pipes. Ever cut off water to win a feud? No? Well, now you know just how wild that kind of neighborhood drama can get. Ever heard silence so loud it practically roared? That was exactly our block last week when I finally flipped the water back on after what felt like an eternity of drought. My little desert experiment that forced everyone to rethink their daily routines. You'd think turning a faucet back on would be a simple, no big deal thing, right? Nope. It was like unleashing a thunderstorm on a parched desert after a brutal dry spell. No showers, no flush toilets, no sprinklers. Just a whole neighborhood held hostage by the absence of water. And Karen Whitfield's face? Pure relief mixed with grudging respect, and maybe a bead or two of nervous sweat at her temple. The same Karen who didn't hesitate to shove my disabled mom over a petty doorbell volume dispute. Karma's a slow drip, huh? If you're new here, I'm Ethan Grant, the guy who actually owns the local water company that services our entire HOA block. Yep, I hold the neighborhood's water keys. And when Karen crossed the line with my mom, remember the tray shoving fiasco from part 1? All bets were off. Instead of resorting to fists or more drama, I decided to lean into a power only I held: water control. Classic neighbor feud turned blackout mode. Think of it like a hold my beer moment for HOA battles. When the water stopped flowing, suddenly, Karen went from self-proclaimed HOA queen to a desperate supplicant, sending frantic emails, pleading for mercy, and eventually offering to swap out that offensive doorbell for a silent one. Didn't expect her capitulation so fast, but I gladly accepted. Watching the diva trade her tiara for some good old humble pie felt like a win bingo night in the best way. Watching someone so loaded with entitlement fold like a lawn chair was something else. Karen's meltdown was legendary. Platinum blonde Bob a little frazzled, clipped orders turning into nervous stammers, and the iron grip on neighborhood control melting away as the water remained off. Meanwhile, Luis Ramirez, our curly-haired, quick-witted neighbor, kept the mood light with his endless puns and nicknamed the whole fiasco Ethan's Waterworks. He joked about sponsorships and how this whole episode could make a killer reality show. Before long, neighbors who had quietly grumbled from afar started cheering quietly, then openly, as if we were all cast members in this unfolding soap opera. From tray shoves to full-blown water cutoffs, this HOA drama united the block in unexpected ways, and I soaked up every juicy moment. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, flipping that water back on, and not quietly either. I gathered the whole block onto our porch for a little impromptu town hall speech. You remember that porch, don't you? The very one where Karen shoved Mom. The moment that lit this entire fire. I stood there, looking everyone in the eye, especially Karen, and spoke from the heart about respect, empathy, and maybe not pushing a disabled grandma just because you don't like her doorbell volume. Karen, I said, meeting her gaze, maybe next time try having a conversation instead of a shove. We're neighbors after all. Her reluctant nod was real, but I caught a glint of mischief still lurking behind the fatigue in her eyes. Classic Karen. Mom stood beside me, bruises fading, dignity intact. And when I pulled her in for a hug, the kind of hug that says you're the real hero here, the neighborhood felt a little warmer. Luis couldn't resist chiming in with, "What are you going to do now, Karen?" which sent ripples of laughter through the crowd. For once, it felt less like a feud and more like a weird, twisted victory party. Naturally, neighborhood gossip exploded like a wildfire. Every juicy detail, from the tray shove to the final water cutoff, was dissected and debated like the latest reality TV episode. Who needs cable when your street serves up this kind of drama? Amid all the chatter, one message was crystal clear. Respect and empathy are trickier to turn off than any faucet. This wasn't just about a bratty HOA queen or a noisy doorbell. It was a lesson in standing up for what's right, even if it means making some waves or cutting off water to get your point across. Because, trust me, nobody's going to forget the week the faucets ran dry anytime soon. What about you? Ever been trapped in a neighbor feud so wild it ended with water cutoff tactics? Seen entitlement explode into totally unexpected chaos? Spill your own crazy neighbor stories below? I want to hear every heated spat, every clever comeback, every time you had to dig deep for patience like I did. After this wild ride, I'm thinking we've got enough material for a season of neighborhood feuds gone wild. So tell me, ever dealt with a Karen? Shared your showdown with a crazed neighbor? Drop it all below. I'm all ears. Thanks for tuning into this insane entitled Karen story. If you're craving more wild Karen showdowns, check out our video on the right. Or if you trust YouTube's instincts, pick the one on the left. Whichever you choose, brace yourself. There's plenty more meltdown madness where today's story came from.